Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Hello, Smokestack. Have you heard Alex Jones's rants turned into a song before?
No.
Let's do that real quick.
That sounds great. All right, lay it on me.
These are all real words that Alex Jones has said during his broadcast, strung together in a nice way.
Fantastic.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murdering scum, running giant death factories, keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face this scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin. They run around screaming, we love Satan, we wanna eat babies. I had them on video. Hillary's in the creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with a creepy, weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot-bellied goblins hopping around coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go high, high. We're such self-centered crap. We don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of poor dead people of the very worst kind, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a butcher knife, and then the police chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good. Oh, they're so sweet.
It really gets you right in the feelings, you know?
It really this sort of makes you. I didn't write that. That was been on YouTube for a while. But I like that. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall.
You know,
Alex.
Most of his worldviews probably formed from LSD trips, like bad trips. But then, you know, most of it's probably gonna end up being true at the same time.
Yeah,
so I don't really know. I don't know what to do with that guy.
Yeah. You remember the song Feed the World?
Yeah.
Feed the world. What were the lyrics to that song?
I don't know, man.
That song, I heard it on the radio the other day because, you know, it's Christmas time. And that's ostensibly a Christmas song because it mentions Christmas in it.
Right.
And I just, I don't know. It struck me that this was the highlight of people not trying to be sensitive
Mm-hmm.
and not realizing how incredibly racist they were.
Yeah.
Like, do they know it's Christmas time at all? And some guy in Africa's like, yeah.
We have calendars too.
We have a calendar. I mean, think about that. We're trying to be sensitive, and then it's like, do they know it's Christmas?
Well, if they're too dumb to like put food in their own mouths and we have to feed them,
like
maybe that's maybe that's the assumption. I don't know.
I mean, like, do they know it's Christmas?
Yeah.
At all? Do they know?
Are they even like sentient beings? Or are they just like yeast?
It's like, it's not that there's like close to 1 billion people in Africa, like 50-60% of whom are Christians and who celebrate the holiday and who have a calendar like other people. But they're like, and then nothing in that song, everything in that song is a caricature of some weird idea of Africa. Like, where the only water flows is the bitter sting of tears. And then, where nothing ever grows, no rain or rivers flow, do they know it's Christmas time at all?
That is such a load of crap. Okay, I've been to Africa.
It's full of rivers.
I mean, there is a region of desert there, but much of that country is beautiful and green and lush. I mean, it's like Florida or something, but
a little
prettier than Florida.
It's like they've taken the continent of Africa and been like, it's all the Sahara Desert.
Right.
Which, it's like, half of it is a big jungle.
Yeah. That's...
But where nothing ever grows and no rain or rivers flow. No, here's the full verse. Okay. And there won't be snow in Africa this Christmas. There will be a little bit. It's okay. They have altitude in mountains.
Yeah.
The greatest gift they'll get this year is life. Ooh, could be said for all of us. Ooh. Where nothing ever grows, no rain or rivers flow. How about the Nile, biggest river? Do they know it's Christmas time at all? Yes, they have. It's like the most racist thing I can feed the world under that burning sun. Do they know it's Christmas time at all? Here's the best line. Okay, so you just talked about, but when you're having fun, there's a world outside your window, and it's a world of dread and fear, because everyone in Africa just lives in constant dread and fear. And,
also not true.
And here's all right. So then it says, where the only water flowing is the bitter sting of tears.
Yeah.
And then the Christmas bells that ring there are the clanging chimes of doom.
Yeah.
And here's the crescendo line for me. Well, tonight, thank God it's them instead of you.
Yeah, that's
what
ghoulish.
kind of song is this? And it's played on the radio as this is like a sensitive. And the thing is, that is the quintessential social justice song.
I bet
it has everything in
Klaus
it because
Schwab wrote that song. He's the songwriter.
Right, because it's like this is an early social justice song.
Yeah,
it doesn't age well.
No,
because
none of their stuff does.
I know it's all going to look as ridiculous as this at 30. Like right now, their argument for why you can't have voter ID is that black people can't fill out paperwork. That's literally what it is. They're like, well, the poor people, they might not be able to get licenses. And by poor, they always mean black, because they say they'll disenfranchise poor people of color. They'll be disenfranchised.
Right.
Like, they can fill out paperwork and get a license also, or a voting card.
Aren't poor white people dumb too? I mean, come on.
Yeah, and not only that, but I don't know what they think. Lots of black people also drive. I don't know. It's like they don't have licenses, and then. It's all of it is nothing ever grows, no rain or rivers flow. Do they know it's Christmas time at all? And the African people in Africa are like, of course we know it's Christmas. We celebrate every year. We have big parades with Santa Claus and everything. It is oh
man.
Tonight, thank God it's them instead of you. And the Christmas bells that ring there, the clanging chimes of doom. It's all, and this is the thing, because I figured out racism.
Awesome.
So you start here, if you have two poles, one where you're like minus racist, and one where you're plus racist, and in between is like gray racism area. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that in your head.
Okay.
If people that are at the minus pole that think they're like super anti-racist or whatever are actually very racist, but they just publicly present as not racist. And then they say things like, does Africa know it's Christmas time at all? And no rain or rivers flow. Under the burning sun, do they know it's Christmas time at all? Right? It's just full of like these stereotypes. And then you get a little more, then you're like, and you get a little so you really sort of view black people as like children to be helped on that pole. Because that's all of our policies. Like, we got to go help Africa,
right?
Because they can't dig their wells. They can't dig wells.
I've personally seen Africans digging really nice wells. I mean,
I know, like you hear all these charities and these missionary groups and stuff. We gotta go dig wells.
Yeah,
they can't dig wells.
They can.
They can't dig a well. We have to go dig their wells, and we have to go. Now, are we getting a little money on the side? Yes, but does that matter? No, we're doing it for. And you go, why don't you help all the people between here and Africa? Like, why do you leapfrog over everybody to go? Like, you can go help people. There's lots of poor people in Mexico. I mean, there's lots of poor people here. You can help. I
can't dig a well.
Many of I can't either. Many of them which are black. You can help black people here,
right?
But if you really just need to help a black person as opposed to anybody else, and then or you can go to Mexico, or South America, Brazil has tons of poor. Like, no, none of it counts. You have to fly over and get your picture holding a little black child with a shaved head at some school, with you smiling, and that goes on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the kids use these days. And that's how you really do charity. It's all about getting a picture with a little black child who you always try to pick the skinniest one to make it look like they're starving.
Right.
Even though much of Africa has lots of food. And they have a little bit of an overweight problem at the moment in many places.
Many parts of Africa, you can't help but grow food. I mean, you just drop the seeds on the ground and food grows. The place is so fertile. Have you
been to Nairobi recently? A lot of those guys are wearing big pork bellies, is all I'm saying. Look,
They're doing okay. They don't need us.
It's like if they drew a map of Africa in their heads, they'd have like big desert, and then underneath it just says AIDS.
Nairobi's doing a lot better than the south side of Chicago. I'll tell you that right now.
100%. Apparently, this is a problem that goes a long way back. I don't think it may have been Charles Dickens himself, or it may have been like in a paper he was writing in. I forget. But the Christmas Carol guy.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just, for the sake of the story, say he drew this political cartoon.
Okay.
But I'm not. He may not have. But he drew this picture of a British woman standing on the edge of Britain, like looking over the ocean, and looking over to Africa at all these starving children,
Yep.
And then there's this little, like, 5-year-old boy grabbing her skirts and trying to get her attention. He's covered in soot because he's a coal miner,
right?
And he's 5, and he's starving. And the caption is, "Please, marm, ain't we dark enough for ye?" And apparently this goes back for forever.
Yeah.
Where like white women like to pretend that Africa is completely helpless, and their virtue has to be shown on. It only works if it's A, far away, and B, you think that they wear masks and dance around in straw skirts all day or something. Nobody does that anymore, guys.
Yeah, dude. African Christians just totally like marched into the United Methodists worldwide assembly and like flipped over the table and said, "You liberals, get the heck out of here."
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they're rocking great over there.
They're rocking in Africa, and like they don't. I mean, there are a few places just like here where the Native Americans will occasionally put on masks still and do their traditional rain dances.
Right.
But mostly in Africa, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
They go and they sit on YouTube all day like everybody else.
Right.
Like, I don't know why this perception that there are these tribes, just like in South America, there are people that live way in the jungle. Sure.
And even a lot of that is sort of a put on for the tourists.
100%. They're like, hey, give us a bit.
It's like there's a whole economy supporting them to continue to live that way because tourists show up and in trucks and go, look at them and take selfies with the little naked kids.
Yeah, it's like when I went to Australia and the Aboriginal was showing me how to throw a spear, and he faked an Australian Aboriginal accent, and then he was like, "Give the spear to another person." It's just in like perfect Chicago English or something, because he's just a black guy that moved down there and pretends to be a tribal man.
Your Chicago accent's really good, by the way.
Well, I was thinking British in my head because I just talked about. But saying Chicago and it came out all funny. I mean, I can't do a British accent either, other than go pip pip cheerio rattle and governor ooh badoo badoo.
Hey, we have speaking of cheerio governor, we have a corrective memo from one of our listeners.
Okay.
Joe Rogan is not 5'1", he is 5'8", and that just needs to be acknowledged because you're spouting fake news, and listener Albert Einstein was a little upset and reprimanded me soundly about this.
I am so tall that people under 6 feet appear much smaller to
me. Can confirm.
I don't understand why you wouldn't just grow to be 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Just it's much better.
I feel attacked.
It's much better. It's like when we were growing up, my friend, he was a big kid. He said his only goal was he wanted to be 6 foot and 200 pounds.
Okay.
This was like when they were in middle school. He's like, if I just get to be 6 foot, I'm fine. And he did it. He achieved his goal. And it was all about mindset.
Interesting.
Really. The people that were like, didn't have that as a goal when they were 12, didn't reach this level.
So if I figure out how to stretch my morphogenetic field, will I eventually
I think so. I mean, it makes sense. You go up on a mountaintop to worship God, like Jesus. If you're taller, you're a little bit closer to heaven. Nephilim, all that.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's something, we have a lot to talk about today. This show, but mainly because, look, so I found this book here.
Okay.
I thought I might read it from you. It's an interesting book. I was over in Portland at my friend Michelle's house the other night. In defiance of the lockdown, maybe, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it counts as non-compliance because it was essential travel and gatherings are allowed per the rules.
Hold up. You were in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah. And essential essentials allowed, and seances and mediumship, depending on your point of view, is essential maybe.
Metaphysically essential.
Yeah, it could be. Anyway, Michelle's a medium, and she was having a little get-together, little party. Try and communicate with the spirits of the dead, maybe angels, maybe other things,
Right.
And see, the thing about a seance that most people don't realize is the seance is really just opening a door. That's all it is.
All right.
You open a door and you call out the names of people you want to hear from on the other side, but really anyone could be on the other side. You don't know.
Okay.
You might be opening a door into metaphysical Africa where there's no rain or rivers. Or you might be opening it up onto metaphysical Mexico where it's just some guy comes out with tacos. You don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't recommend trying it per se without some training, also because closing the door can be difficult. Very easy to get into a situation where there's a spectral vacuum salesman with his toe of his ghost boot against the door, like a doorstop.
Yeah.
And you're just sort of stuck, until you buy the vacuum, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that may have been a labored metaphor.
Is that code for something? Like sell your soul to the devil or something?
No, just buying the vacuum. I mean, it's because some ghosts want different things. Okay. Anyway, we've been over there and we've been seancing for 2 hours. Not much happened. Table floated a little bit. Michelle thought she heard some voices, not that much. But then around maybe 2 a.m., I'm just sitting there and boom, thud, wham. I feel the weight just descend on my lap and I look and it's this book that I've got. It's this book right here that I'm going to read to you from.
Where did the book come from?
Well, I mean, I was a little surprised. I mean, it's a little covered, apports are usually little knickknacks and things. Apports are things that appear from the spectral realm and the physical realm. And they're usually little knickknacks, like on your like a little button will materialize, or a bobby pin, or a ring, or something. A full book.
Okay.
It's not unheard of, but it is rare.
Okay. So this thing plopped out of the ether into your lap.
Right. And so I thumbed through it, and I realized that what's been given to me from the spectral realm is a history book from the future.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It's called America, the First 300 Years, U.S. History, People, and Events, 1776 through 2076.
Oh.
And it's published by a guy named Abraham Jamarcus Lincoln King Jr. under the banner of a company called Elizabeth Warren Press and Native American Journal.
Oh, man.
And best I could tell, this book comes from around, the publication date is the year 2547. So the events go from 1776 to 2076. Mm-hmm. But it's the first 300 years of America, basically.
Okay.
And that's what it says. And just above this little thing is a picture of the title is a picture of what appears to be a mestizo man getting out of the lunar lander. And it says a Common Core certified study for grades 8 to 12. So that's really good.
Awesome.
I mean, how many people get a glimpse of the future and really, we really only ever get a view of what past generations thought.
Right.
But through my friend Michelle's formidable powers of witchcraft, we actually have here a view of what future generations will think and how they see history.
This should be great. I'd love to hear some of this book.
So I thought I'd just read some of it to you guys now. I haven't read it at all yet. I've just poked at the cover and stuff. So this is all green to me too. I thought I'd just open it and see what's going on. Cool.
Let's get your cold take on it.
Let me see here. Lots of chapters. I'll let you pick. What do you want to read first? I'll give you some choices. We can start with 1, the beginnings of the American Dream, 1776 to 1800.
Okay.
2, America is Born, 1939 to 1968. Or 3, America defeats fascism, the overthrow of the apostate Donald Trump and the Red Hat Rebellion of 2016 to 2034.
I think 3 sounds, germane.
Okay, let's go with 3.
Okay.
Page. Okay, here it is. A good pick. Let's see. Right, America defeats fascism, the overthrow of the apostate Donald Trump. All right, let's read the beginning thing here. As is held by Neo-Vedic Yoga, the religion of the founding mothers Harriet Beecher Stowe and Rosa Parks, all living souls go through an endless cycle of birth and rebirth, which can be affected by their tantric power and karma, which is a Sanskrit word for anti-racism. Hitler, though, being literally Hitler, still held enough karma from past lives to reincarnate once more before being sent into the eternal abyss of hellfire, which was decreed infallibly by Pope Francis XIV at the Fifth Vatican Council, along with a college of female cardinals, which also declared the dogma the invalidity of all masses said in Latin, as it was discovered that the Church Fathers held Latin to be anathema for, quote, being insufficiently gay. So it came to pass in the fullness of time, when the age of Aquarius at last had dawned, that this ancient enemy of America again took on flesh and breathed his flames of hatred across the land. It was a dark time, and many perished. Say their names: Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Joan Rivers. But the spirit of our fathers, which has birthed the nation aright in the flames of the Second Great War, Antifa, again birthed to life as if fanned to flame by the great breast of Gaia herself, and Hitler in his new orange incarnation was cast down, thrown into the fiery furnace with all his deplorable... Whoa!
That's pretty intense, man.
I was not expecting that to get so religiously intense. Ooh. Apparently they are... Whew.
So the next 100 years of America is really going to be kind of a religious time. Or at least the interpretation of it later will be.
Yeah, that makes me want to go. But here, let me read that first bit. Wow. Okay, so if I go to the first of it says the beginnings of the American Dream, 1776 to 1800.
Okay.
Okay, this one starts with a quote from George Washington. It says, in italics, it says, George Washington, we didn't do nothing. Okay. Nice. Okay, so, here it is. In 1776, a diverse group of revolutionaries met in seclusion on a dark and stormy night. They'd spent the winter smuggling refugees across the Mexican border into the British colonies on the Underground Railroad. They were a tired and ragged bunch, but in their hearts burned a dream of liberty and equality, freedom, justice for all. Harriet Tubman, one of the early abolitionists who fought the British in the Nat Turner Slave Rebellion, put on her powdered wig and stood before the assembly of the wise and learned. Many stunning and brave figures were there. George Washington, the man who would go on to become the first handicapped president of the United States, having prosthetic teeth. Benjamin Franklin, who was an early striver for gender equality and pioneered new fields of sodomy in his exclusive Hellfire Club. Thomas Jefferson, champion of interracial lovemaking. And of course, Frederick Douglass, the inventor of peanut butter and beatboxing. Together, these young revolutionaries penned an explosive and revolutionary document, declaring the price of tea reflected systemic racism and, woof, intense.
Ooh, man.
Pretty accurate, I'd say. pretty accurate.
Okay.
I mean, we've really...
Yeah. So we're embracing the new regime? Is that what we're doing today?
I'm just saying that okay. Here's that second one. 1939 to 1968, America is born.
Okay.
For over 150 years, the brave and dynamic vision set forth by the founders at Appomattox had struggled to gain a foothold. While the ideals of the nation on paper were high, on the ground inequalities abounded. Women gave birth frequently and men did not. People of color were often called horrible slurs like colored people. And the racist owner of MyPillow, Michael Lindo, had grown rich selling sheets to the alt-right and the KKK. But fortunately, by the grace of God and her wisdom, a terrible storm was kicking up in Europe, ready to destroy the old order. Several Jews were sacrificed on this altar in a terrible Holocaust. 6 billion burned alive in 1 million degree temperatures inside ovens with suspiciously wooden doors. Gassed at great expense with pesticides, even though just shooting them all with a 5-cent bullet would have been much cheaper. This was the great wake-up call America needed. Would she sit by and watch as the pre-incarnation of Donald Trump, one Adolf Hitler, engaged in the slaughter? Or would she at last throw off her chains of oppression and, behind the strong leadership of General Malcolm X, lead a global civil rights movement that would engulf the oppressors twice in yet another holocaust of bullets, bomb, and nuclear flame? Whew.
Man,
that is
I feel like I need a break from that. It's just
intense.
It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, that was... Oh.
The future sounds pretty lit.
So I did that bit to make a point. No, I'm not denying the Holocaust. Chill out, people. It's a joke. It's a jokey joke.
These are the jokes, folks.
It's a joke. It just is a little weird that you go to all this expense to do a genocide, building ovens and stuff, when your war chest is already strapped for cash. And like, you could just shoot people.
He's just saying.
I'm just saying, if I was going to do a genocide and I rounded everybody up and then I was like, we got to kill all these people. I hate them. It's like, should we shoot them, sir? No. First, let's wait and build gigantic ovens.
Yeah.
And gas chambers. And then we'll put them in there. And then, I'm just saying, this
Zyklon B is not cheap. You know,
skinning people alive and turning them into lampshades seems like an uncharacteristic waste of efficiency for the Germans. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't even think human leather is good at being a lampshade. It's pretty thick. I think it would block most of the light out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I feel bad for Hesher and Spore. Like, they take us on and I immediately start talking about Jews.
I know. I don't think they knew what they signed up for, but...
No, I believe in... I'm not a Holocaust denier. The Germans did a bunch of bad things to the Jews. Yes. However, it's also been hyped up over the years, I think, in the whole lampshades out of human skin and stuff.
You don't think it could have been somewhat distorted through the lens of politics?
Yeah, I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
You know, at all for it to have been. And look, it's not my fault that we have to talk about the Jews. It's not my fault. I'm not doing it, see. I'm just bringing it up. That it seems like everybody does this. The Ukrainians go on about Holodomor now. And it's like, just shush. If I was Ukrainian, I would never bring up Holodomor. Because they would be like, oh, they made us eat our own kids. No, they didn't. You could have foraged. come on. You don't, if it's the choice between starving and eating your own kids, you just starve. You just die.
Yeah, true.
Come on. They didn't make you do that. And they're like, man, it's like, just quit.
So, are American white people going to one day talk about the opioid epidemic the way that...
Yes, everyone does this. It's so annoying. Just, and I'm not saying that Jews bringing up the Holocaust is annoying. I'm just saying they do it too often.
Yeah, at some point you kind of wear it out.
At some point you kind of wear it out. And let me tell you my Jew story.
Oh, no.
So, I go... One day I went to the...
Do you have to call it the Jew story? I mean, is there not a better... You're going to get us kicked off ACR. I'm just saying.
It's a nice story. Okay, my Jewish story.
I don't think that's really any better, but go ahead.
Well, it's a story about my time with the Jews.
Okay.
I don't know what... One day, once upon a time, I went to the they don't call it a temple because they can't do sacrifices. What is it called?
I don't know.
The Jews go to have their Saturday worship. Their Seder. Or not Seder. Well, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Not Seder. That's Hanukkah stuff. You know what I mean. Or Passover.
The thing that they do on Saturday, whatever that is.
The thing that they do on Saturday. And I was going to go, just because I like to go to different religious services and see how they do it. Mm-hmm. I go to the Quakers sometimes. Sometimes I go to the Buddhist temple. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I go to the Muslim place and just watch them all do their prayers. Talk to them and say hello. Right? That's the thing about this. I'm actually like the least... I go and hang out with the people. But anyway, first time I walk into the Jewish place... I mean this literally within 30 seconds.
Okay.
I meet the rabbi. He says, hello, welcome to the thing. Very nice. And then he says, hello, here is our Holocaust survivor. I'm not kidding at all.
Like their mascot?
Like it was just a mascot. And there was this old woman, and he pulled her up, and she was like, oh, yes, I was in the Holocaust. And she told me this brief story. And she said, yeah, and then I said, oh, really? And this was not that long ago.
Okay.
Okay, but here's I found it.
Did you ask her about the wood door?
No, like the wood door thing is just a meme. I mean, if you have a sufficiently, it's fine. But I was like, in my head, I was like, are you old enough to have been in the Holocaust? Like, you're old, but you're not like 90.
Right.
Right. You're like late 60s, apparently, or you're keeping together very well. Mm-hmm. And what are the odds? I do not live in a place with just an overabundance. Like, I don't live in New York City.
Right.
With, like, a lot of the Jews in America live. There's a very... I thought, what are the odds that this small place would have a Holocaust survivor just on hand? Like, within 30 seconds of one. And I thought, am I being played here? Is this like a sympathy?
Well, maybe they get, like, distributed. Stuff. You know.
Well, maybe. People do this stuff. People will... I mean, stolen valor is a thing that everybody... People be like, oh, yeah, I was in the military. And then you look at it and, like, they weren't. People do that all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, like, why do we assume that other people... I found... She may have been in the Holocaust. I don't know. But she was... I thought it was very statistically improbable that within 30 seconds of me walking in, they were like, oh, and here's our Holocaust survivor.
Well, how did she survive?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Right? Like, it's...
I guess there were some people that they were in line, but they hadn't.
Well, I think, my thing about, I think there's a conflation of several different, like, there were death camps, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
But there were also work camps, and there were also, like, there were camps where you weren't supposed to die, they just treated you badly.
Yep.
And then and so people conflate or you were like a political prisoner or something, you weren't on the list to die, and the people conflate, like, I was a prisoner of war camp, and they conflate that with the same as the death. And there's actually 3 or 4 different sort of camping things. It was a big camping thing. Everyone was just camping. They were just out doing Boy Scouts. And
historians do this crap all the time. Is they take something that happened, They distort it so out of whack for political reasons. When somebody actually goes and looks at the real events and they see all these discrepancies, they end up throwing the whole thing out and just become deniers.
Right.
It's a problem that
I'm trying
created.
to help the Jews.
Yeah.
I really am. Because the thing about it is the people that aren't Jewish, and I've talked with Jewish people about this, bring up the Holocaust all the time to the point it gets embarrassing for Jewish people.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, please stop that.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
Like, it would be like, I don't know. It would be like if I was Native American, and like every day I went, which I am, and like every day I went outside, people talked about how we used to be genocided. Or it's like, this is really, you're really making me feel bad if every time I come up in public discussion you talk about me and my people being murdered. Like, can we talk about something else? You know, like, can you bring up Judaism without talking about the Holocaust in public, please? That's how a lot of them feel. It's just like the Native Americans. Can we bring up Native Americans without talking about smallpox, please? You know?
It reminds me of that girl that went into the Starbucks and started crying and apologizing to the girl working there, and she's like, you know, what do you want in your coffee, lady?
What would you like in your coffee? Yeah, it's all, do they know it's Christmas?
Yeah.
It's all, so anyway, that was my, you didn't like the term Jew story. Let's go with my Semitic story.
The time you met a Holocaust survivor.
The time I met an alleged Holocaust survivor.
There you go.
I'm not being, she just wasn't old enough, guys. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to have to go and edit in. I'm going to go do an impersonation of you and say, let me tell you about the time I met a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. She just wasn't old. She would have had to have been like 2 years old. And maybe she could have been there. But then,
right.
But she wouldn't have remembered it, is the thing. Like, and then I just found it unlikely that within 30 seconds, there wasn't anyone, it wasn't like that. I had showed up early because I wanted to like make sure I had all, and I wore a little yarmulke because they asked me to, and I wanted to make sure I had all. I'm very respectful when I do these things. I go to these places. I'm like, hello, I would like to participate or sit by. I want to know, like, how much can I participate? How much can I not, you know, because I'm not in their religion. Do this with the Muslims too. Like, how much can I just sort of, is it okay for me to be here and watch? I go there a little early. So I'm there, and there's only like 4 people there.
Right.
And it just seems statistically improbable that within 30 seconds I would meet a Holocaust survivor that the rabbi just pulled out of, like, basically the closet.
Well, you know, you're probably not the only person that has just showed up there, and a lot of them are probably like shame tourists, you know?
That could be it. Maybe they just have her there for the tourists, just like the people in Africa with the masks.
Yeah, it's shame tourism. So they knew what you were there to do. You were there to apologize.
That's it.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. That, like, people come here and they want to apologize about the Holocaust and say we love the Jews, and they're like, so we need somebody.
It's like a public service that they do for people's mental health. It's like you give them this catharsis.
Yes, but that makes so much sense with her words, because I was like, oh, hello, really? And she said, and she did this nod and said, so you may now, you know.
Right.
And I was like, I wasn't sure what she was expecting.
You're absolved. Yeah.
I think she was there giving absolution, basically, I guess.
That must have been the deal. Yeah.
That makes it make so much more sense. Like, they come here, these non-Jews come here, like, so often and want to, like, all they want to do is talk about the Holocaust and how bad it was.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to pull out this old lady and say, look, can you please handle this? And just let them offload their emotion on you. Mm-hmm. And me, who I don't really have a lot of emotion. I don't know if I like a lot of empathy.
It's probably a good thing.
And so she was like, it was like hitting a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And so, but that makes so much sense that's what that is. Just like, it ties in perfectly. That's like the black people that put on a grass skirt and jump around for the white tourists because they give them money. It's, this lady was doing a public service. Now, she really was. She really was. Like,
mentally unwell leftists go to her for
I
feel
think
better.
they do because I was like, so see, now we're making good progress here.
Man.
See, this is how you see things, and you're like, so because like a lot of people who are very racist, and like I was saying on the racism scale, when you start at one end, you're actually super racist, and then you think black people don't know it's Christmas time. And as you move forward, then you get like, but when you get to the other pole of extreme racism, then you're actually like, oh, there are differences between people, but it's all cool.
If we could just get the world to figure out that anti-racism is just as racist as racism, we're going to do a lot better.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, like,
I mean, quote-unquote anti-racism. You know what I mean.
Well, racism, like, I don't know. I just never seemed like when I was in high school in the locker room, we would sometimes have fights between the whites and the blacks.
Right.
Just for funsies.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to divide teams up quickly. We didn't have to take off our shirts and be shirts and skins. Sometimes we did do shirts and skins. And sometimes we just did whites and blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And the one Mexican guy was like, where am I? And the black guys were like, do you like Dragon Ball Z? And he was like, I love Dragon Ball Z. He's like, then you're on our side. And that's how it went, you know? Because the thing about black guys in America is that most of them are nerds that want to be ninjas.
Right.
They love being ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, the war in the Congo, one side just called themselves the ninjas.
Really?
Yeah, like as recently as the 90s. They were just like, we're the ninjas. And the other side, I forget, they had some equally nerdy name, like we're the pirates. It was like little kids making it was like this.
Well, a lot of them were
100%.
actually
It was
kids.
like the ninjas versus the pirates. And they're like, whoa, bam, 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 bam. And then they would just go and play act at being a ninja. Every dude I knew growing up that would unironically swing around a katana was a black guy. They love being samurais. That's how you get on the team if you're Mexican. You gotta be a samurai. Yeah, Samurai Champloo. A great anime. I guess that's an anime. About black. That was the one, or maybe there was one. I may be confusing my cartoons. There was one show that was basically like the urban inner city today, but instead of gun violence, all the black guys fought with samurai swords.
Sounds rad.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was like gang violence by the code of the samurai. It was great. I'm just saying. Actually, when you get to the extreme quote unquote racist side, you have more solidarity with people. Because they're like, look, do you like Dragon Ball Z? Then you're on the black team.
Yeah.
You know, and the one white guy that would rap a lot, sometimes he'd be on the black team.
See, that's cool.
Yeah.
What's racist about that? Nothing.
Not exactly. See what I mean? See, it's all, I'm solving the world's problems. I'm solving the Holocaust. I'm solving Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We're just solving the world's problems.
That's good.
Okay, so I did the bit with the book to make a point. Because I wanted to talk about the real great tragedy of 2020, which was not the pandemic or the race riots or the mostly fake election or all of that stuff. I want to talk about the real tragedy of 2020. What do you think it is, if you had to guess? Is it that we joined ACR and started talking about the Holocaust?
It could be. Well, Asher in Store might say that, but
okay. No. What it is that the reality. Okay, so what I think the true problem with 2020 is the reality, which is not fake, that the story agreed upon that societies tell themselves is fake.
okay.
Right, so I think the problem in 2020 has been the death of knowledge. It's an epistemological crisis. Right? Because we've seen in real time a civilization rewrite itself. Like, retcon its backstory. Like, listen, those first 3 movies never happened. We're going to start over again with Spider-Man. And this time, his uncle, whatever his name, doesn't die, and then and then you do 3 more movies. You say, okay, now we're gonna cut that. That never happened. We're gonna start over. This time he's 47 when he gets his powers. Okay, we'll start over. Those movies weren't doing so good. We'll do it again. This time he's gay. Go get it's just been a recon of America. I mean, now it's common for people. Think about it this way: like the story of America in really many societies right now. Its beliefs, its religion, all the way back to the beginning. They just pretend it was a different way, and they pretended enough that people begin to believe it. Like, it's now super common for people to pretend that, in fact, the past was always super diverse. It was sometimes. Ancient Rome, for instance, right? But they want to pretend it was always super diverse, and we just never acknowledged it.
Right.
Like, look, England was actually half Japanese in the 1500s. Who knew?
Who knew?
It was actually just half Japanese, except it's always half black people because, again, white women fetishize helping blacks across the ocean. They just, do they know it's Christmas? Which is a form of racism because they think they're the only ones that need help, and you know what I mean. But and I mean, like, look at that movie Hidden Figures. It was like, actually black women did the moon landing.
Yep.
Like, no, look, the church never said we couldn't worship Pachamama. No, of course you're supposed to worship indigenous idols. And listen, George Washington, he was Native American too. He was just of a different tribe, and that's why he hated the other ones. Or something.
Is that a thing people say?
I don't know. I doubt it. But I mean, it's completely possible. It could be, because you can just make up whatever, right? And so with all this happening, like for instance, I mean, you see it happen in real time. Like, masks don't work. Masks do work. Or the thing is, it's A, now it's B, and A doesn't make sense anymore. And then the next month it'll be C. I mean, in my lifetime, the big wake-up call for me was when everyone was like, I remember going through this growing up. It was like, we love everybody. Now we hate Muslims. And we did that for 10 years. And then they were like, and now we love Muslims
Now
again.
we love them, yeah.
And it's like this switch that you can just turn on and off in society.
Yeah.
And it's like, right now they're like, switch for hate white people's on. But in a while, they'll turn that off when it doesn't suit their needs and turn on a different one. And who knows what it'll be this time. This is why this is why I get worried, because they could very well turn on hate the Jews next. I mean, easily. It's not that hard to drum up resistance against the Jews with some populations, like Muslims, for instance, that live here.
Yeah.
You can, because they have a history going back and forth. It's not that, or you can do it with Catholics. You can easily bring up history with Catholics and Jews and be like, oh, remember when they did this? And drum up hatred. It's not good. It's not a good switch to have, right? But the easiness with which they can pull these switches up and down and cause the population to just retcon their own history has been so apparent that this is why everyone's in conspiracy theories now.
Yeah.
Like, it used to just be me and a few other people. Like, this community was small. Like in 2002, when I was like, hey, well, it's like, I felt very much like Tim Dillon said, like, in 2001, like, I remember sitting in high school when the towers fell. Yeah. And they came in and they said, the towers fell, and everyone was like, and I just started screaming, inside job, inside job. It was an inside job. CIA. Just started screaming that at the top of my lungs instantly. Just knew it.
You knew, right? Dude.
I knew. No, I didn't. But that was, like, very quickly, I was like, wait a minute, something's fishy about this.
Right.
And that was like, like if you said that in 2002, you were just despised. Because, like, what are you?
Oh, yeah.
It's proud to be an American. We got to go bomb the brown people. It was obviously Saddam Hussein, even though it clearly wasn't. and I was like, what's going on? You know,
Yeah,
that was
man.
when I was like, this is weird, because that was my first real wake up to like the public can just be told a thing and they're just like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could tell them the 180-degree opposite thing and they're like, oh, right, yeah. And seeing that happen in real time, used to this would take several generations. Or, you know, at least it seems to be. Like things would change more slowly without mass media.
Right.
And so the retconning of your own history would be slower and it was less obvious. And you'd think it was continuous. I mean, like, for example, do you really think the story of George Washington and the cherry tree happened? Or is that just a little too cutesy?
I think it may be a little too cutesy.
Right. Like that was an example before mass media of us retconning how people were like, oh, George Washington was a saint. He couldn't even, though he did for some reason vandalize his neighbor's cherry tree. he was also honest, and without his consent, he was also so honest he had to tell him about it.
Mm.
Like, that doesn't, I don't know. I never chopped down my neighbor's tree. Growing up, but like George Washington was sort of a ruthless bastard. Honestly, he was a pirate. I mean, he bought his own warships and then just declared that he would take on the King of England.
Yeah.
You know, and then
It's pretty rad.
He didn't do this in a nice way.
Yeah.
And he also wasn't that great of a general, to be honest. He lost a lot. He made a lot of mistakes. He got on a boat in the middle of the night, crossed the river, and slaughtered a Christmas party. Right?
Yeah.
He's not like
Ice cold, baby.
He was ice cold. I mean, he wasn't this guy that, you know? And so they retcon how he was.
Yeah.
Over the generations, right, to make him seem like this other person. And Ben Franklin, who goes to the Hellfire Club and who has a bunch of skeletons literally in his closet, we also retconned to be like, oh, he was just this kooky old guy. And one time he put a key on a thing and he discovered lightning. Isn't that he discovered electricity. Isn't that crazy? When the real story is he was scared of the electricity and he didn't know what would happen, so he made it like his nephew do it or something. Like he didn't hold the thing himself. He watched as his nephew got electrocuted.
Oh, hold this.
Yeah, for real. And so
seems kind of weird, Uncle Ben. You sure it's okay? It'll be fine, kid. Come on.
After you have your charred remains, I'll take you to the Hellfire Club.
Yeah.
I mean, they, and people would pretend for a long time that, like, Thomas Jefferson was a super religious man. Mm-hmm. And then they bring up, oh, wait, actually, he wasn't. He, like, cut out parts of the Bible. And so it's just whatever, at various times in history, like at various times now,
right,
the founding fathers are portrayed as proto-globalists who believe in all equality, mm-hmm. when that suits the narrative, and then like 5 minutes later they'll be like they were white supremacist slave owners.
Yeah.
Like they just boom. Right. They'll do that. This is why these narratives like about the Holocaust is so dangerous. Like just mm-hmm. to drum, like you should be like, yeah, okay, you should study the history and like fine, but it's so dangerous to bring it up because you can just twist that switch a little bit,
yeah,
and flip the whole narrative on its head. And then it's like that sort of stuff you can easily just flip the switch the other way, just like they did with Muslims. Like, we love Muslims, now we hate them for 10 years. Then we love them. There's nothing stopping that from doing that with Jews. And the populace will go along with it. That's the scary part.
I think it may be the Geneva Convention identified this, but there's a document, I'll try to link it in the show notes, about psychological abuse of prisoners of war and stuff. And one of the things that's detailed in this is changing rules and changing the story and pretending that it never happened, kind of a gaslighting thing.
Yeah.
And that's really what's being done by, the media government complex to us now at increasingly short intervals. Things are just being flipped and then flipped again, and then And I'm wondering, like, what's the next? Do you have a projection on what the next switch to flip is going to be? That the next opinion that is now going to be opposite?
I do, and I want to warn people. I've actually talked about this, not on the show, but there's going to be a flip where because what they're going to do, I think, because Satan just wants people to die. He doesn't care who you are.
Right.
What they're going to do, I think, is for a while, I don't know how long, maybe 5 more years, 10 more years, 15, something. They're going to keep with this white privilege narrative, white people are bad or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to stir up like a lot of angst and hatred. And then they're going to flip it and be like, oh, actually white people are what America's about and we got to kill non-white. Like I think they might easily do that. And then like drum up white people to kill. Like they're going to flip the narrative at some point and you got to watch out for that.
Yeah.
It's not a good, like all this stuff is not good because you can just turn the dial whichever way you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. The crisis that we're facing right now is a crisis of epistemology. Like, of how do you know what you know?
Yeah.
Right. And the solution to this that's been floating around sort of the NRX dark enlightenment sphere for a while is, well, just read old books. Mm-hmm. Right. Get you a dictionary from 1850, and that's what the words really mean.
Yeah. Right.
Get you a history book from 1920. Get a pre-Vatican II missile. They scream impotently. Read what the older church council, like that's it. Like that's the way, right? Like,
right.
And the assumption that is based on is that we are in a one-time aberration of knowledge of epistemology, and that otherwise history has been fairly epistemologically stable. But it has not.
It has not. That's true.
Like when you read something, say like you say, just read old books. What's not appreciated is that the consensus of history being described in a high school textbook from 1920 is merely the current version of the leftovers of this same process we're going through right now.
Yeah.
Like, just like when I read my future textbook, that was what, like, their revolutions and of culture had just produced that as, like, this is what it is. You know, as Napoleon himself said, history is just agreed upon lies. Napoleon knew this way back then. Right? There are these periods of upheavals of culture, followed by a fairly stable long period where everyone agrees on that narrative set in that myth formation. Right? But the 1920s version of history was itself the result of a previous upheaval, the so-called Enlightenment and Renaissance. And that before that was the result of, the Middle Ages, who saw themselves as like coming out of the collapse of the Roman Empire. And before that was the result of like Christianity destroying paganism. And before that, and it just goes on, and all the history's fake. Which is sad.
Yeah.
But it is sort of true. All history is just a biased look at what happened, and then people with new biases correcting the old biases in a new way, and then people they quote unquote correct the biases, and you just get this tortured nonsense that comes out the other end. And archaeology is the most important part of the histories because they can actually go find physical evidence and be like, well, at least we know this city was here.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's like the best you can do. Because sometimes that even gets erased. Because during the 1800s and until very recently, like the late 1900s, they were like, Troy didn't exist. It's all a myth. It's not based on anything.
Wow.
It's not based on anything. Homer just made it up for the narrative. Because they went through a period where anything sort of fantastical couldn't happen. Right? So anything that was tied to anything that was like a fantastical story, if it had a god in it or an angel or like a miracle or anything in the story, you couldn't say like the story happened but they embellished it. You were just like, it just didn't happen at all.
Okay.
And that's what they went through. And that, so for forever, there was no Troy, and then they found the remains of it, and like, yeah, there was a thing, right? But so, the question is, the textbooks will record as history that George Floyd's death sparked a revolt, right?
Right.
But we know that the actual what happened was a lot more complicated and a lot more fussed with.
Mm-hmm.
And that a lot of the riots were funded by outside influence and all this stuff. Yeah. And then you think, well, is that, if the textbooks will record that about George Floyd, is that the same thing they're doing with Franz Ferdinand?
Yeah.
You know, like was his maybe, because we're all aware the official story is only sort of tangentially related to the truth.
Yep.
So we ask, okay, well, was Franz Ferdinand similar? Is the whole mythos surrounding World War I faking gay? And if such things are fake, why stop there, right? Because like then you get into like, this is why we have this morality crisis and this spiritual crisis. It's like, what confidence do we really have that Jesus said what the Gospels record he said? Mm-hmm. The church can seemingly change teachings on a whim now. You know, how do we know they haven't before? And that's why this whole crisis is epistemological. Like, how can you be sure of anything? You can't be sure of history. How can you be sure of right and wrong? How can you be sure of what sort of... And these are like legitimate questions in the face of this time we're going through. And we have to figure out sort of what to do about that.
So do you think that the popular undercurrent of people seeking transcendent experiences, either religious ones or pharmacological ones or whatever, is a reaction to this process and how much distress it puts on a person?
Yes, I think, because what that is that, so they're saying, how can we know what...
How do you cut
real?
through? Yeah, how do you cut through? Because it's like you talk to somebody that had an acid trip, and they that becomes often their core belief of reality is what they saw on this trip, right?
Right.
And it gives them a transcendent framework to view world events through. So it's like, you know, everything that's bad in our society is really the pot-bellied goblin vampire elves or whatever, you know, working behind the scenes. So it gives you this transcendent idea, you know, and it makes me think about the biblical connections between, you know, pharmacology and sorcery and all that. You know, you can kind of go down that road. It's like, what's the relationship between religious beliefs and psychedelics and all this kind of stuff. But I think maybe the root of that behavior is people are looking for a way to cut through this nonsense that is, you know, as each decade of a life passes by, you see more and more of. And so, you know, people are seeking some way to cut through it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what happens when you have this epistemological breakdown. The only thing that seems to offer hope is basically Gnosticism, like gnosis, like inside spiritual, because it's like, well, I can't trust what other people are saying. Like right now in America, I would say basically all institutions are suspect, if not completely outright broken. Right? And I think most people feel that. People don't trust the medicine community. They don't trust politicians for sure. They don't trust the education system. Yeah. They don't trust Hollywood. They don't, I mean, name a thing. They don't trust the church. They don't trust, name an institution and people don't trust it. For good reason.
Yeah.
Like for good reason. And so they say, well, what if I have to like go, I need whatever it is that exists, God or the universe, to give me personal knowledge. And that's all I can go on. Mm-hmm. I need a direct line.
Yeah.
Right? And so make fun of Gnosticism all you want. It comes from a real place of necessity for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Because in a sense, you're sort of always your own pope. You know, because like you can say like, oh, this various, I mean, just with the real pope, you can say like, well, I follow the pope. It's like, but you chose to follow it. Like you decided that the arguments for that were correct, and you gave yourself permission and authority to say that you were going to follow him, right? Like it still comes back to your choice based on your knowledge. And so if people can't, or people are like, you know, I choose to believe social justice warriorism, like you chose to do that too. You listen to, I mean, you may not have made a good choice in whatever you've chosen, but you're still working on your own personal knowledge, you know? So, what are the solutions to that? You know, because like, you know, there's factoids, right?
Sure.
Okay, there's factoids. This is the thing. The world is full of factoids. Like, oh, over there, there's Asia, and over there's some Mexicans in Mexico, and over there's some black people that don't know about Christmas time. And over there's some penguins. And sometimes people commit murder. And sometimes they grow food. And you have all these just factoids of life that exist.
Okay.
And they don't make any sense. Like, they're not connected to anything else without an overarching narrative structure. Like, your narrative structure is what makes sense of the world. Like if you're a Hindu, you know, then you the thing about it is all of the successful narratives encompass most of the factoids of life. Like, if you're a Hindu, you're like, well, I was born. Why was I born? Because I was born in a previous life and I've come into this life based on my actions in the last life. And then I will die, but I'm part of some universal Godhead thing, and I'll be reincarnated again, or I won't. If I was good enough in this life, I'll ascend to nirvana. And then the plants come up, and I eat the plants, and I don't eat the cows, and so all the factoids of life are rolled into it, right?
Yep.
And it works. It's a functional system. But the thing is, here's the problem. All the successful ones also include all the factoids. Like, you can be a Muslim and be like, well, I was born. Why was I born? Because God created my spirit to test me. And if I pass the test, I'll go to heaven. And if I don't pass the test, I'll go to hell. And there are some animals we can't eat and some animals we can't. Why? Because God's decreed it, because for his own private wisdom we don't quite understand. And, you know, and that also takes care of all the factoids of life, like how you should behave, what life and death is, what is good, what is bad, right? And that wraps all the factoids into a place. It puts them into a place. Like, you know, I've got this, I've got that, this relates to that. Because otherwise, without an overarching narrative, you just have discrete factoids that don't have any relation to each other. But you can also do this with communism. You can also do this with Shintoism in Japan. You can also do this with fascism. You can take any big system and view all the facts of life through that lens. But the thing is, that narrative is giving you the ability to hook these. It's like they're like all the factoids like ornaments, and then you put up a tree and then you hang them on it.
Yeah.
The narrative is the tree.
Yep.
Right? And if you don't have a tree, you just have a bunch of scattered ornaments on the ground.
And that's the position that people are in today in modernity, is that by changing all the factoids around and reversing them, reversing their like moral polarity and their details, they don't hang on the tree. So there isn't, nobody has a tree to hang their factoids on, or at least many people don't. And
well, you can accept the mainstream tree given to you. Like,
right.
Today, here's a pine tree. Tomorrow, we're going to give you a palm tree. The next one's day after, we're going to give you an aspen.
Well, the problem is, they keep doing surgery on the tree, and ornaments keep falling off of it.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly so. And so a lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to go cut down my own tree. And that's where you get into our sphere. Mm-hmm. Where you start believing everything is fake, and it is. And you start cutting down your own tree. Like, here's the two entertainment options. Lindy Man said this recently. He said, in America, you can have the liberal news media, which makes jokes about the news, right? Like there's Stephen Colbert, and just sort of or you can have a do-it-yourself puzzle piece game, where you take all of the pieces and you try to put them together in this giant narrative that involves secret affidavits and underground tunnels, and you can just it's. Like, you can either take the tree given you, but if it keeps shattering all the ornaments you like that there's a distinction between men and women,
right?
That keeps falling off the tree, it won't hang up there. Then you try to cut down your own tree, but you don't have and you look for other people that have trees, and you go like, say, to the Southern Baptist Convention. You're like, do you have a tree? And they're like, well, we did have a tree, but we cut it down due to COVID.
Yeah.
And okay. You don't have a tree. Okay, I'll go. You go like, hey, you Muslims, do you guys have a tree? I really need a tree. And they're like, we don't celebrate Christmas, but we do have a tree. But people get very suspicious and sometimes walk in and shoot you for having this tree.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, well, that doesn't sound like a fun tree. And then you go to the Jews, and you're like, do you have a tree? And it's like, yeah, it's a tree, but we're putting it in an oven constantly because that's all people want to talk about. Like we can't just have fun and be Jews. We just gotta constantly. Like that sounds depressing.
Yeah.
And then you go to communism, like, do you have a tree? Like, yeah, we got a tree, and here's some ornaments for you. You have to be really mad all the time. And everyone's like, well, I just want to, and you just wander out in the woods, the metaphysical, epistemological woods, with a makeshift hatchet, and you just start chopping at things and hope one of them will hang up your ornaments. And that it won't die and rot and all the needles will fall off, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got so many metaphysical trees in my head that just have piles of needles at the bottom just waiting to catch fire. So many, right?
I'm sorry, buddy.
It's okay. I'm used to it. But, there's just, and occasionally they do say, it's like, well, there goes that tree. That didn't work anymore, did it? And that's where everyone's at. And so then you're like, well, how do you solve this problem? Like there's so many narratives. Is there a correct narrative? And if so, or is there like a most true narrative? And if so, how do you tell what it is? And how do you separate it from all the strings of nonsense attached to it?
Right.
And there's no really good solution at the moment for most people, which is why, regardless of who comes to power in the future, society will continue to degenerate into polarization because no one has matching trees, and their ornaments are all broken, and they're catching fire, and the light bulbs are out on the tree, and it's just not a happy Christmas.
So describe for me a time in history when a majority of people had the same sort of tree and things were relatively stable.
Well, that I think that's been like I said, these what happens is you go through these periods where they cut down all the trees, and then you go through and everyone decides on one out of necessity, and then you just stick with that for a few hundred years.
Right. Okay.
And what happens now is we're in one of those times where they're trying to decide on the new tree, and like the French Revolution was a great one for that's when we just uproot all the past. We just uproot it, and now we have a new thing, And then, but between the French Revolution and say World War II or World War I maybe, because World War I is really when all monarchies sort of really finally met their last gasp, right? Or maybe you could say the Reformation in World War I. I don't know. You could draw the lines in many different ways, but there's a period of basic stability, like France is like, well, we're Catholic and we do this and we don't like the monarch anymore. We're also a republic. And over there are the British and they're Protestant and they have a monarchy that they really like. Right? And that was each of you had a tree and you knew what the other tree was and it was fine. And then they just start tearing those things down, as time goes on. So it's hard to say exactly when, but I think
medieval Europe would qualify. I mean, that was a time of a lot of low level sort of physical chaos. There was a lot of fighting, although really the scale of that fighting was pretty puny compared to what goes on today. But it was a normal part of life,
Yeah.
But I feel like the epistemological framework of medieval Europe was very stable and sturdy.
I think so too, and but that came out of a period of complete instability when the Roman Empire was collapsing.
Right, and then the Enlightenment blew it up.
Yeah, exactly. This is how crazy it was. A lot of the offices that the church uses because they formed the quote unquote Holy Roman Empire after Rome collapsed, which was neither holy nor Roman nor really an empire. Every word of that was fake and gay. It's like, is this an empire? And they're like, yeah, it is. Yes. It's like, you don't have much land and it's an empire. Is it holy? Well, don't look over there, but yeah.
I mean, somewhat.
Is it Roman? No. But we sometimes speak Latin.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. So the Holy Roman Empire was going through, when it was first getting started, they went through like old documents that they could find in the rubble of Rome. Like in the old court. And they were like, let's look for titles and we'll just give ourselves these same titles.
Wow.
Like what does this word mean? Like viceroy or something. Like, I don't know, but you can be one. And then, that's really what it was. It was like, and what is it? I don't know well, let's make you a hamburger. You could be a Count Hamburger or a Burgermeister.
Yeah, there you go.
Like you be a Burgermeister. What does a Burgermeister do? Nobody knows. Just make it up, and then we'll figure it out over a couple 100 years. And that's sort of what they did. Like, the epistemological breakdown was so complete that they were just like LARPing as the Roman Empire and hoping it would work out, and it sort of did. So maybe we just gotta LARP it till we make it, and we LARP it as something else. We gotta figure out what we're gonna LARP as.
Are we at the end, or where in the epistemological breakdown and disintegration process are we, in your estimation?
Ooh.
Is everything, are we totally shattered? Are we a box of Christmas ornaments at this point? Or
so there's all right, so here's our epistem. I'm gonna frame it for you. So there's a Christmas tree in the den. And it is now April, and no one has taken it down.
Okay.
And there are mostly it's bare twigs, but they've watered it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still a few ones that have brown on it.
Okay.
Brown needles. And it's wrapped with these very sketchy Christmas lights that get too hot.
Mm-hmm.
And around the floor is a bunch of broken glass ornaments. So one of which is the First Amendment.
Yeah.
And another, and then all the ornaments are just sort of. There's still a couple sort of hanging on there,
mm-hmm.
and there's a couple that have broken several times, and people have glued them back together, but they're not quite the same shape. And
so this is the Christmas tree of the post-Christian West, I take it.
Of us right now. This is our Christmas tree.
Okay.
And right at this moment, someone is thinking, how do we make this look better? And someone says, let's go back and be trad and put live candles on it like they used to.
Yeah.
And then it's just going to go, woof.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at, because people are now at the stage where, like, if you noticed, everyone's a reactionary now.
Yeah.
Everyone, because everyone is justifying their moves now based on what happened in the past, whether it really did or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we have to go back because, in the past, this was Native American land, and
right.
And we have to, it's like hyper reactionary in a way, disguised as, it's in the language of revolutionary terms, but no one's doing anything new. They're just like, hey, let's just give a lot of power and money to people that already have it. And it's like, well, that's your plan? Yeah, it's going to be great.
I mean, I'm sympathetic to it in a way because we need to react. Like,
we do, but
we're in a situation where it's react or get squashed. So, but maybe everyone should ask themselves how rooted and occluded by the fuzz of history is the thing I'm reacting to. Am I reacting to something current and concrete and that's really happening, or am I reacting to an idea that was told to me by a social studies teacher? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think if we try to react to things that are around us right now, things that are actually happening, like really react to real stuff, mm-hmm. maybe you're creating a better basis for yourself to make life decisions at this point. Because I think a lot of people are making life decisions right now.
They are.
Yeah.
And but that is definitely one helpful thing is like, just if it's on a screen, just ignore it and just try to make decisions based on what's happening around you in the real world.
Yeah.
Because what's on the screen is, again, mostly fake.
Mm-hmm.
It may affect you, but it's also mostly fake. That's one thing. But like, this is my criticism of the trad movement, and people like, we just gotta go back. It's like you're just putting you're gonna go back and put candles on this dead tree.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna go up like you put candles on it when the tree is fresh and green,
Mm-hmm.
But you can't at this point, if you do that, it's just gonna, because like you gotta go forward in a way. Like in a way, I am a progressive because you can't really ever go back. Press escape to go back. You can't do that. You can't revern or whatever you can't revern to Dravision.
Right.
Right. You have to you can't go backwards in time. Maybe because we're in the cyberpunk sort of future. I know Cyberpunk the game just came out and people are excited.
Yeah.
And I like Cyberpunk too. I haven't played the game yet. I think it's probably good. I'm gonna give my character really big boobs. Because that's a thing of this.
I feel like that's half the purpose of the game is just to. It's like everybody's weird body fantasy being lived out.
Because you can like what game has made you have a customizable character where you adjust the size of their genitals?
Yeah,
it's strange.
That is very.
I mean, it's very cyberpunk, so it fits to do like heavy body modifications, but
right.
But we're already in a cyberpunk future now, getting more so all the time. If you define cyberpunk as like massive, sort of technocratic control of society, like, hello, here we are. Like just yesterday, I said something on the Twitter about the virus, and I immediately got locked out of my account.
Really?
Instantaneously. And it said, we need your, I've never used my phone number because I don't want them to know to tie things to me. Like, it said, if you want to unlock it, we need your phone number.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, no. So I went and did what I always do and got a burner phone and gave them that. And then, this is a good thing, by the way. If you want to if you want to get around doing, let me tell you my system. You want to get around signing up for all these things. Because you go, I have some solar panels, some little pocket solar panels. You put them out in the woods. You attach your phone to it, your burner phone. Right? It's not really a burner at this point. It's just like a default. You put it out in the woods, way out in the woods, and you pay for it all with cash. So there's no trace to you at all. And it's never been hooked up to your Wi-Fi. It's never been hooked up. You never put any. I always call myself Daniel Martinez or something like that when I sign on my name. And I say that I live in the middle of Alaska with my zip code. And then I put it in the middle of the woods with the solar panel, and then it's just always on. It's fine. I covered it in Ziploc bags. It's fine. Unless it floods there, it's going to be okay. And there's enough light getting through that it powers it and keeps it on all the time. And then if I need a Twitter code, or something, I just put in that number, and it texts to that random phone, and then it emails me to my burner email account the code, and then there you go. Now you have a way to get it, and no one ever can track you, right?
That's pretty cool.
And that's what people have to do. So, like, my thing is, like, there's this cyberpunk future. What is the answer? It's sort of like what I'm trying to do is my answer is solar punk. Like fine, I will just be independent on I'll make my own electricity. I'll make my own thing, right? Maybe the solution to being cyberpunk is you go forward and be solar punk. And you're like, well, that's fine. Y'all do what y'all do. I've cobbled together my own thing over here, right? And I'm just sort of skirting around on the edges, and it's okay for now. And when you decide on a Christmas tree, maybe I'll come help decorate, right? But for right now, just do what you do, So I don't know. I mean, it's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know that there is a solution other than just waiting around for people to grow old and die.
I think it helps people to understand why all the chaos around them is happening.
It does.
And it helps you make decisions. It gives one some clarity.
It gives one some clarity. Do you want to talk about Missing 411?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to Missing 411!
That's not the theme to Missing 411, by the way.
No. So this is Missing 411, if you don't know, is a term used to describe Jews that went missing during the Holocaust.
No, it's not.
I know. I'm just so sorry that I did that. Ah, ah, ah. Okay, we gotta tone it back in.
Okay.
I just feel so sorry for Asher and Spore. Okay, the Missing 401 is a series of books, and I think it is the. What is it? Is that the code for a missing person in national parks? I think it is.
Okay, I don't know.
411.
Sounds legit. We'll go with it.
Anyway, there's this guy named David Politis, and he has this killer mustache. Okay, that's the most important bit. He has a killer mustache, and he was a policeman in the San Jose Police Force, in California, for a long time. Then he retired, and he started going hiking a lot, right? And so his origin story was he was in a national park searching for something else, which he always says something else, right? When he tells the story, he's like, I was researching something else. Let me tell you, that something else was Bigfoot. Just getting it out there. He doesn't bring that up very often, but it's
sure.
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to sound crazy off the bat, right? Yeah. It's like, I was out there researching something else, and, then this, and no one ever, but what were you researching? He's like, Bigfoot. Okay. So he was out there researching something else. And he'd been out there, out and about that day, and thought, he thought maybe he'd seen some people following him around, and he wasn't sure, but he thought maybe there's tourists hitting the same spots as him and so on. Okay, but then he gets back to his room that night. He's sitting in the bed. He gets a knock on his door. Knock, 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 knock. And he opens the door. There's two men in plain clothes who claim to be off-duty park rangers. And they come in. They lay out this story to him. They said, listen, we know that you're a journalist and you write these books and you're a former police officer. Said, over our careers, we've worked at several national parks, and we are disturbed by the high number of missing people cases that have gone missing in the park, right? And that in itself is not that unusual because parks are big, people get lost, right? But it was more strange in their minds that the searches would go on for like a week or two and then just be dropped, and the whole case would fall into complete radio silence. No one ever brought it up again. No one ever, nothing more was ever said or done about the missing people. They were just memory hold. And both men claimed they didn't really notice this until they worked at a few different parks and saw the same pattern over and over again. And so David Politis says, well, okay, he's been an outdoorsman most of his life. He's just always assumed, like most people, that people that go missing in the woods are just cases of like bad judgment, getting lost, falling off a cliff. Maybe someone occasionally gets eaten by a bear. Mountain lion, right? But he says, for whatever reason, what they told me didn't sleep well with me, and something about the info doesn't really sit well with him. So he gets up the next morning and he calls a couple of former Leo buddies, law enforcement officers, who are still working on the force, and he says, hey, can you look up the files on some missing cases in national parks for me? Just see if you see anything unusual. And he goes back to drinks his coffee. Half an hour later, he gets a call back from his friends, and they say, wow, a lot more people go missing in the woods, than we had imagined. Like, there's a lot of people.
Yeah. And
also, the case files are very scant. Like, there's not a lot here, like no suspects or anything. There's just really the initial report of them going missing, and then, like, we searched for a day and found nothing, and, like, the case file hasn't been open in 25 years. So David said, okay, that's odd, and he begins looking into National Park Service, and he starts filing like Freedom of Information Act requests and stuff. And he says the Park Service begins fighting back on his investigations the whole way. Like, they ignore his calls. They're not responding to Freedom of Information Act requests. One person on the phone, he says, he gives this one case, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and he says he's asking for like stuff, and he gets a call back from the Freedom of Information Act office, and they say, why do you need to know about this? And he says, well, you're not legally allowed to ask why. He says, and the guy says, listen, let me tell you something. You will never get any information about this case. And he hangs up.
Ooh.
Right? Ooh. It's like, what is that about? So, undeterred, he begins looking into these cases, and he notices that there is some patterns to the ones that, like, there's ones. So you get people that are missing that you can sort of clearly tell why it happened.
Yeah.
You know? And so you throw those out because but the ones that are suspicious, he notices that there's some criteria that most or all of them fall into. And these criteria are as follows. 1, swamps. They're always near a swamp. Now people hear this and they go, right, well, that makes sense. Swamps you get lost in, drowning, suicide, whatever, animal attack. But if there was any way to remotely connect the disappearance to like a suicide, drowning, or whatever, it was taken off his list.
Okay.
So the other one, the cases center around people who are either they're on both ends of the spectrum, highly educated and accomplished, or have some sort of physical/mental disability. Right. So it's almost like the phenomena is picking out the special, or the gifted. Right?
Okay.
Number 3, the search dogs find nothing, or they just move in circles over and over again and lie down. Okay. 4 is berry bushes, or people picking berries, or maybe picking mushrooms. They're always out foraging when this happens. Now I've done research into the early 1900s and late 1800s Bigfoot sightings, like Wild Man, and that struck me because I can tell you that's also the case. Almost every newspaper report at that time goes, the women and children were out berry picking, and then the wild man showed up. It's always berry picking. It's very weird. Okay, then number 5, the people, when found, if found, are found near creeks and rivers or other waterways, right? Again, that sort of makes sense. Maybe they're following the creek or river, hoping to use it as a path.
Like they're found alive, or they're found dead?
Either one.
Okay.
All right. And also that sort of makes sense because that would make sense to dogs, sort of like why you couldn't find anything if you're walking through a river. All right. About 90% of the people fitting the other criteria who are found alive either will not talk about what happened or say they can't remember, or they are not able to talk about it. So one of the things is the people that come back alive from these scenarios are not able to tell you what happened. Maybe it's because they're so small and little, like a 3-year-old child, they're unable to really articulate it. Maybe it's because they're mentally retarded in some way. Maybe it is and sometimes they just simply will never say anything. Or they say they can't remember. They're just found kind of in a stupor, sitting on the ground in a daze, no recollection how they got there, right? 7, many of the people found, alive or dead, are missing an article of clothing, very often a shoe or shoes. 8 is a large percentage disappear in the evenings. 9, inclement weather disrupts searches, right? So like you'll begin a search and then instantly there's like some Bigfoot HARP program that covers the ground in impassable snow.
Okay.
Right. If the body is found, they are found in. This is the most important one. If a body is found, they are found in an area previously searched, often many times, implying they were not there when they were originally searched, but then they were dropped off later.
Ooh.
So you find this over and over again because the guys will be like, "Oh yeah, we searched that area like 7 times, helicopter, ground, dogs, and then this guy just shows up, So I'm going to look at some of the cases with you. So the Stacy Arrows case in Yosemite, okay? Actually, I'm going to start. Okay. Stacy. So Stacy was 14. I think this was in the 90s.
Okay.
And with her, she went with her dad and 6 other people on horseback into the backcountry of Yosemite to get to some cabins. So it's about, if you've never been to Yosemite, the backcountry, and also Yellowstone, the park has built cabins you can go camp at that are way out of the touristy area.
Yeah.
And you hike to them or you ride horses, right? It's about a 5-6 hour horse ride. They get to the cabins and they put their horses away, and Stacy goes into her room and changes and freshens up. And she tells her dad, "Hey, I'm going to go about 200 feet away to this rock and take pictures over the vista that, it's overlooking a lake." He says, "Yeah, sure. There's an old man with her. He was 72 at the time. And he wants to go sit. So he goes down and sits on the rock too. And they're talking and they're looking out over the, he's just resting. After a minute, Stacy tells the old man she's going to walk down the hillside to the lake and take some pictures and be right back. And people saw them have this conversation. And so the old man watches Stacy walk down the little path along the hillside. And she goes into this clump of trees. And that was the last time anybody ever saw her.
Oof.
There was a huge search. Huge. Hundreds of people were looking for her for 2 weeks. And the only thing they ever found of her was this lens cap of her camera right inside the tree line beside the lake. So when David Paulides was investigating this, he put in a Freedom of Information Act request to the National Park Service, and it was denied. And he appealed it, denied. He appealed it again, denied. And then that was the one where he got a call from a quote-unquote special agent within the Park Service, and he said, well, why do you want to know about this case? So David is an ex-officer. He knows the law. He says, the government isn't allowed to ask why. But he sort of being polite and says, well, why does that matter? And the agent responded, well, I just need to know why. And so David is being a bit coy. He says, let me ask you something. Is this a missing persons case or it is a criminal investigation? Because, see, if a criminal case is still open, that is sufficient justification to deny an FOA request.
Right.
Right? Because you don't want to, you don't want to give the information away. And the agent says, no, it's a missing persons case. It says, okay, well then, are you investigating any suspects, or has anyone looked into this case for 20 years? No and no. So, okay, David says, so what rationale is there for not giving me info on this case? I've been looking into a lot of these lost cases in the woods. I'm writing a book about it and stuff. Why not this one? And the guy says, I can only tell you, you will never see this case. And he hangs up.
Oof.
So what, Stacey Abrams, right? So what could have happened there? Bit weird. All right, there's the other case. There's the Dennis Martin, and there's hundreds of these cases. I'm just highlighting some really interesting ones.
Sure.
Dennis Martin in the Smoky Mountain National Park. So a boy named, this was in the June 14th, 1969. So a boy named Dennis disappeared. I'll just start with me. So he was a 6-year-old boy. He was in an area called Spence Field, which is up in the higher reaches of the park.
Yep.
It's this big field surrounded by these thick woods.
I've been there.
Yeah, you know Spence Field.
Yeah.
So Dennis, his dad and brother and grandpa, so be careful next time you're there, are up there camping for Father's Day weekend. So Dennis, dad, brother, grandpa, right? Father's Day weekend. About 4 in the afternoon, the boys are running around playing in the field, and dad and granddad are sitting in the camping chairs, and this other family comes up and says, hey, we're camping nearby. Would you mind if our kids play with yours? And Mr. Martin says, that's great. Coincidentally, this other family is also named Martin, exact same last name. So the kids decide they're going to play hide and seek. And Mr. Martin, Dennis's father, is very attentive. He keeps a close eye on his kids. He watches Dennis. They're playing hide and seek. And so he watches Dennis go behind a bush at the end of the wood. And the game ends, and they call Ollie Ollie Otzen free, and Dennis doesn't come out. Well, Mr. Martin doesn't wait very long, and he starts calling for Dennis, and no answer. So he jogs over to the bush, finds Dennis is gone. Okay, so now the Appalachian Trail goes right through the middle of Spencefield.
Yeah.
And Mr. Martin takes off at a dead run for over 2 miles down the trail, finds nothing. The grandpa simultaneously goes down the trail the other way to the park ranger's office, and within a half hour, there's about 30 rangers looking for this kid. Okay, so within a half hour of Dennis's disappearance, it began to rain. That's one of the criteria, like inclement weather comes in.
Okay.
It rained nonstop for 5 days.
Oof.
Inclement weather hitting the area right after just completely swamps the area, makes the searching very difficult. So as Dennis is disappearing down at okay. At this same time the disappearance happens, down at the lower levels of the park, there's another family at the ranger station. And they say, hey, we want to go see some bears. And the ranger says, oh yeah, go down to Rowan's Creek. It's a dad, a mom, and 2 kids. And their last name is the Key family. And as the Key family is walking up to the creek, they hear this loud, blood-curdling scream. Like, ah! Just out in the woods, right? And immediately afterwards, they're looking around, and the 9-year-old boy says, hey, Dad, look at that bear up there on the hill. And the dad turns and he says, son, I don't think that's a bear. It almost looks like a big man. Now, they don't actually think that much about it at the time, and they're like, that was a little weird, some crazy big guy screaming in the woods, and they're spooked out and they leave. But the Key family would regularly report it looked like a large man carrying a bundle. Just in the woods at this bus. So the next day, they're up and about at the camp again. There's this local paper on the desk, the Knoxville newspaper. And Mr. Key sees, and it's all about, of course, the front page is the Dennis disappearing. And Mr. Key, he sees this and he thinks, We saw what looked like a large man carrying something in the woods and a scream. Maybe it's related? Maybe? Yeah. So he also reads in this article that an FBI agent has been assigned to this case, right? Bit of irregularity already. It's not, to my knowledge, common practice to assign an FBI agent to a kid going missing in the woods. Is it? I don't think it is.
No, usually the FBI only gets involved if it's, crosses state lines or something.
Right. Yeah, and it's like a criminal. So
which the AT is on the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. I mean, it's so.
But like the next day, and you've got an FBI. I don't know. It seems a little.
Usually they let the locals work on it for a while.
Yeah, usually it's park rangers, local police, fire and rescue. So what caused them to get an FBI agent less than 24 hours out there?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little suspicious already. So the Key family calls the Park Service and tells them, hey, we saw this thing. And within a few minutes, the FBI agent rings back and says, hey, yeah, I'm interested in your story. And Mr. Key goes, great. Well, if you want, I'll meet you over at Rowan Creek and I can show you exactly where it was. And you think that's great as an investigator, like the agent, you'd like to see the scene to see if it makes sense. But the agent goes, no, you don't go there. I'll come to you. So the agent comes and talks to them, takes a statement, and that's all he ever says about it. But a few days later, the rumor mill among the searchers starts to circulate, and people get wind that this FBI agent met this other family. He had this story, and one of the people they are searching is a reporter from the newspaper, and this rumor, he gets his interest up, and he goes around to the Park HQ, and he says, do you know anything about this? He said, yeah, we did get a call like that. We handed it off to the FBI agent. We haven't heard anything else about it. So the guy starts digging, and he finally tells him about the Key family. And Mr. Martin, Dennis's dad, hears about this, and he's very angry that no one has passed on this information about a potential key witness in this event, right?
Right.
Like the key. So he has a big fit, and he gets in this argument with the agent, and he was like, what are you doing? Why didn't you tell me about this? And the agent was like, no, look, we shouldn't put any time or men on the Rowan Creek because the timing doesn't make sense. There's no way that could be connected, right? There's no way, if that was someone carrying someone, there's no way anyone could have gotten that far with Dennis in that short amount of time. It's unrelated. It has to be. But one of the Rangers takes Mr. Martin aside. He says, that's not true. He's wrong about that. We could easily lock it. In fact, we'll do it this afternoon to prove you could do it in that time frame. And so they did. And they got there no problem. They do it in less time than it would have required. It could totally be related, okay? So let's leave it right there and back up a few days. So day Dennis goes missing, there's 30 to 50 Rangers looking. The following day, it's up to a couple of hundreds of people. Then the day after, the call goes out to the community, and people come out to work. They take off work. They come out there. There's thousands of people combing the woods that live nearby looking for Dennis. Like literally thousands. Just local guys taking time off to try and find this kid.
Yeah.
Then, about day 5 or 6, out of the blue, who do you think show up?
I don't know.
The Green Berets.
Ooh.
Now, again, to my knowledge, it's not really normal to call in the Green Berets for a missing persons case. Is it? I've been around.
I mean, maybe they could be doing it as a goodwill mission. So there is there's a military base in North Georgia near the AT where you'll end up seeing a lot of guys stationed at the base out there doing, hiking in the woods and doing exercises, field exercise training kind of stuff. So, they're in the area. So they could have come up, they could have heard what's going on and said, hey, let's send some guys up there to help with the search.
But like the Green Berets, I don't know. It's just,
I mean, it's a little weird. I'm just trying to,
Yeah, so they show up in helicopters, their own communication systems, engineers, the whole bit. They set up basically a base.
Oh, well, that's a little different. Yeah, man. Wow.
They set up a portable base. They got helicopters, and and McCarter, the ranger that had walked with Mr. Martin, to prove that you could go that distance.
Mm-hmm.
He said when David Paulides interviewed him, he said, it's very strange. We could never get a straight answer out of anybody about who called the Green Berets out there. There were rumors they were training in the area and decided this would be a good training, and a nice thing to do at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
So we sort of made that up, but no one ever gave that as an official reason. We just sort of guessed, And also, one of the Rangers went to the Berets and offered to pair up with them and like, hey, we're the Rangers here. We know the area really well. We can help you, so you know the landscape. And the Rangers rejected it. They said, no, we're going to work alone. Didn't share any information with the Rangers, the other people searching at all. And the Green Berets remained there, ostensibly searching for Dennis for 4 to 5 days. And they just packed up and flew off with their helicopters. Okay. So Paulides made 3 FOIA requests about orders to the Green Berets during this time in that area, and 3 times they weren't even denied. They didn't even get a response, which again is unusual. I've made FOIA requests and I always get a response. Sometimes it's like, we have no information on that.
Well, they're bound by law to respond, right?
Yeah, like when I say, tell me what you know about secret hidden pyramids in Oregon, and they say, we don't know anything, sir. Please stop wasting our time. And I say, no, do it again. Then I say, what about Washington State? And then they, but I've always gotten a response. So as far as I can tell, this would be the only time the Green Berets have ever been dispatched to find a domestic. Like they might try to. I mean, they'll try to break out a prisoner of war, that sort of missing person in Abu Dhabi. But like a kid in the woods. Okay, so. I mean, there's a lot of weird things, but people do go missing in the woods for very regular reasons.
Sure.
Things happen. Like, for instance, I was once walking in the woods with my friends. And I rounded a corner and found a guy lying in the middle of the trail bleeding out of his neck.
Ooh.
And he was still awake. And I said, sir, are you okay? It was an icy day. It wasn't snowy, but it was icy. It had rained and iced over, right? And so the trail was icy. And best I could get out of him, he had slipped off the trail on the ice and fallen sort of over the side, and a sharp stick when he fell had just sort of punctured his neck.
Ugh.
And so he had scrambled back up on the thing. And when I get there and I look, and he's covering his neck, and I said, well, can I see it? And he moves his hand, and I can see his jugular vein. Right? It's a deep cut. Like, if it had gone just a little bit deeper, it would have cut the vein open, and he'd be dead instantly. And people do weird things because I'm trying to help this guy, and I'm digging in my backpack, getting out things to tie up his neck and all this stuff, and he's got our bandana around his neck, just covering it in blood, and like, come on, we got to help you. Can you walk? Can you get down? Because he's a big guy, I couldn't carry him. And so I'm trying to help him, and I'm he's sort of leaning on me, and we go a little ways, and then he just sort of collapses. And he's dizzy and lightheaded. So then there were 4 of us, and I said, okay, look, me and the other guy, we're going to run down to the bottom and try to help to find help. And you and the other guy, one of you stay with him, the other one, maybe you go up to the top and see if you can get cell phone signal, right? And we'll see, maybe one of us will get there first. So that's what we do. And, we did this whole thing, and there's a whole big to do. But I noticed when I was trying to help this guy, like, people react when people get injured in a situation, they don't react sanely, because he would be like, oh no, I'm fine, and then he'd start, I'm gonna keep going to the top, I'm gonna keep going, it's okay.
Whoa.
I'm gonna keep going, and he would stop and he'd be like, look at how beautiful it is, isn't everything beautiful? It's fine. I mean, he's just sort of in fight or flight mode, and he's chosen to like flight. Like, he's just completely irrationally, right? He's still like, I'm okay, because like he's in real danger of death, and this is scaring him, right?
Yep.
And he's denying what has happened and how severe it is. And so he's saying, I can just go on. And, I was trying to like, no, man, we really need to go back down. We really need, I will help you, but we really, and he's like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And then he does this until he collapses, and then we run down. And we found some people, and we got someone there had a phone that would pick up one little bar, and we were able to get 911, right? And I was exhausted because we'd ran like several miles down this mountain trail at like a sprint. And that was really, I realized like the limits of what you can do in such a situation, because I was like, I want to go back up there, but my legs are not working right now.
Yeah.
Like I was like, going back up was like, I did eventually go back up, but it took me a couple hours to recoup, Because I ran as fast as I could on this icy trail. And like, it was a whole thing. At like 5 a.m, I'm there, and there's this, not even, it's like 3 a.m. There's this, I finally find this ranger who's like trying to get up the hill with like a unicycle gurney. I don't know if you've ever seen a gurney they use for a trail, but it's like it's got this one big wheel.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And he's like, hey, help me get this up there. We get it, and then it's this whole thing. The guy did eventually survive, right? We kept him alive. But my point in that story is that when people get hurt in the woods, they do irrational things. So a lot of this could be explained by that sort of thing, you know?
Just as an aside, you have sort of a personal record of getting into dicey situations deep in the woods in wintertime.
I know.
We should tell your hypothermia story sometime.
Yeah, you can. Did you know, listeners, that it is very difficult to hopscotch down a mountain in a sleeping bag, as though you're a caterpillar? It is. But when you don't have any clothes,
yeah,
and it's -10,
yep,
that's sometimes what you got to do.
Can confirm.
Anyway, so I should also note that in these books, before I go on to the other cases, Texas and Florida had so many people that they were just left out. He said that's got to be their own book.
Ooh.
There's so many. Now, Florida makes sense because of the Everglades, which if you've ever been to the Everglades, it's astonishingly easy for someone to get lost and never come back.
And it's full of alligators.
Yeah, and full of alligators and snakes. It all looks exactly the same. Miles and miles and miles of endless, boggy, wet monotony with nothing to distinguish one place from another. Like, nothing. It's like everywhere you are, it's like, this is the exact same place I was. And alligators and snakes in Florida. Panthers, right? Ready to eat you. And bears. There are bears in Florida. People don't realize that.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. There's black bears in Florida. And wild hogs.
Yeah. Those tear you up.
So Florida makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to go to another case here, which I found particularly strange. So this is the case of Aaron Hedges. So in 2014, Aaron Hedges was 38 years old. He lived in Montana. He was an avid hunter. And during the season, he would spend just about every weekend in the Crazy Mountains, or the Crazies for short. If you don't know, the Crazies are like this group of mountains in Montana that are disconnected from the Rocky Mountains. They're like a little island of mountains. Okay. Right? Just sort of off by themselves. They're close to the Rockies, but they're not technically connected. And they're known for being like incredibly rugged, right? So Aaron goes there hunting, and he goes there like all the time. So much so that he had put up caches of supplies all over the mountains just so he could stay up there longer. He's like, if I want to go hunt up there, I'll go up there. I've already got a little stash of like a sleeping bag up there, a little tent. If I want to go over there, you know. All over the mountains, he had these caches. He knew it like the back of his hand, right? So food, water canisters. Okay. So September 13, 2014, Aaron and 2 of his friends decided to go camping up there and do a little hunting in the Crazies beside this lake called Campfire Lake. Now, you don't drive a car to Campfire Lake. You have to hike in, right? Just like the Yosemite case. And in fact, they actually used 2 mules to carry their stuff in.
Okay.
But on the way in, something spooked one of the mules, and it bolted. And it tossed a lot of Aaron's equipment. Some of it he couldn't find again. They did eventually get the mule back after chasing it down for some miles, but he was like, you know, some of my good stuff was gone. And Aaron says, hey, it's fine. You know, I'll just use some of the extra stuff you guys have. I don't feel like running out to my caches or whatever. But day 3, he's getting a little uncomfortable. He's like, I want a warmer sleeping bag. And I have one of it, one of these caches. So, you know what, guys? I'm going to go north for a bit to one of the stashes, get my stuff, come back. I'll be back before nightfall. Should have been a day trip. Hike up there, hike back. His friends know that he's up there all the time by himself anyway, so they're just like, yeah, all right, no problem. But a few hours later, one of the friends decides to check on him, and he gets out his radio and radios him. Now, so they had GPS walkie-talkies. You ever seen these?
Oh, yeah, those are cool.
Yeah. They have, for the listeners, when you ping the other person with your radio, the walkie-talkie, it will light up on an LED screen their GPS coordinates so you know where they are, right? It's very nice to have. Mm-hmm. So it's about 10 a.m. He left in the morning, and his buddy pulls out his walkie-talkie, and he pings him. And he says, "Hey, Aaron, GPS coordinates show he should have been going north. GPS coordinates show you've gone like really far to the east. What's with that?" And Aaron picks it up. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got turned around somehow. I don't know. I'm gonna spin back and I'll be back. And I'm a little behind, but I'll still be there." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." Now, in retrospect, this was telling because this mistake he made was extremely obvious.
Yeah.
So there's a fork in the trail at this point, and one trail goes to the cache and the other trail does not. And the one that does not had a creek running beside it, and the other didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been up this road 1,000 times. He would have known, like, oh, I'm going down a creek. This isn't the right way. Right? So maybe he's, for some reason, not in his right mind. Maybe he's also hurt his neck, and it's like, yeah, I'm fine. It's okay. You know, it's whatever.
Well, this place is called the Crazies. Just pointing that out.
It's cool. Okay. But Aaron sounds lucid, and his friends are like, okay, you know, I'm fine. But again, like the guy I knew in the woods, he was like, yeah, I'm fine, because he was acting out of fear. Maybe he'd already hurt himself. I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. But they go about their day, and that night, Aaron is nowhere to be found, and they try to radio him, and nothing. There's not really much to be done. There's no cell service. They can't call the police, so they say, okay, maybe he'll be here tonight. Maybe he's just running behind. He shows up in the middle of the night. I don't know. Well, if he's not here the next morning, we'll go look for him. So they get up, September 6th, nothing, no Aaron. They search for him. They head off toward the cache. They're radioing him. They're looking, nothing. The next day, they leave. They go get help. They say, we got to go get help. Massive search is launched. Helicopters, groundspeople, the whole thing. But as soon as they start, again, Bigfoot Heart Program, a massive storm drops 2 feet of snow within the first 12 hours of the search.
Ooh.
So because of the blizzard, nothing can be done very much for the first 2 days. So that pushes the story back to September 9. So the focus of the search was mostly, in the beginning, along those two paths, like the correct path and then the wrong one. Because they figure like we either continue down the wrong one or we double back or whatever. They find a little ways down the wrong path Aaron's boots.
Oh.
Neatly placed, side by side, standing up. Like they've just been sit there. And beside the boots are the remains of a fire pit, recently used, and the remains of a cigarette container with Aaron's brand. So it looks like, you know, he's been here.
Right.
For some reason he took off his boots in a blizzard and lit a fire. And then, after removing his boots, he just walked off into the woods, barefoot, in a blizzard. All right, so next to this fire was his camelback water pack and some straps of his other backpack, which had been burned in the fire. Now, the telling part is the searcher said, listen, we were in this exact spot 2 days ago, and this wasn't here.
Oh, man.
So he's done this he's come back at some point during the, you know. So at this point, they think he's suffering from severe hypothermia, right? Because so one of the things people will do when you get really hypothermia is you start to act insane and remove clothing, when that's the exact opposite thing you should do.
Yeah.
I've
seen this.
This is a documented thing, because what happens is when you get hypothermia, you start to feel really hot, because your body will, to keep you alive, it will shunt the blood away from your limbs into your core.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you start to get frostbite and stuff. You shunt the blood away, but then your core heats up real hot, because all that, circulation's being constricted in your limbs, and it's going, so you're getting all the heat and so you start to feel really warm, right? And then people start to remove their clothes, because like, oh, I'm sweating, it's so hot. But really their body is fighting to retain heat, right?
Gotcha.
So just a reminder, if you ever get in a situation where you're out in the snow and you start feeling really hot inexplicably when you should be cold, keep your clothes on. Don't just have now people, again, you're not in the right mind state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after that, so you don't really, make good decisions, but just that you know. All right. So they think, well, this taking off his boots is a sign of severe hypothermia, right? And we need to make a new search based on these boots, because he's likely got hypothermia, and without shoes, he can't have gone far from this spot. So this will be the new, this campfire will be the new center point of our search, and we will fan out from here. Okay? Remember, this is 2 feet of snow, rugged terrain, barefoot.
Right. Yep.
No sign of him, nothing. They never find him. 9 months later, A family known as the Rhines, who lived at the base of the Crazies, were doing yearly maintenance on their fence around the property. And one of the families, about midday, he takes a little break. He walks up the hill into the Crazies for just a minute to have his lunch and sit out and look over the scenery, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He gets about a mile up there so he can have a good view away from the property, and he spots an orange vest under a tree. He thinks, oh, hey, look, a hunter lost some of his gear. So he goes over there and sees, oh, not only did this hunter lose his vest, but his backpack is here and neatly placed against the tree, and inside is Aaron's license, his wallet, his food, water, and a loaded gun. And next to the pack is a rock, and on this rock there is a thermos that is open and an energy drink like a Gatorade.
This is nine months later?
Yeah. As though during the winter he just walked out this place, right, without his shoes, sat down and started having a Gatorade. Right there. Now, there are two things about this. One, from this spot, you can clearly see the Rhines property below.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not even, there's no trees blocking the way. If he'd gotten that far, he would have seen help is right there. Even if he couldn't walk, he could have removed his gun and shot some help shots, you know, like, hey, help.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Second, this spot is 6 miles from where his boots are found. So he's walked 6 miles through some of the roughest terrain in North America in the middle of a blizzard, gets within sight of a property where someone could help him, and decides to just sit down and sip Gatorade and leave his backpack, and then walk away from it. So a year goes by from this, and there are some horseback riders going along near the same place where the backpack was found, and they see a human skull. And sure enough, winds up being Aaron Hedges. And the rest of his skeletal remains are not far behind, except for his feet, which were never found. And the coroner could not determine a cause of death.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Isn't it, though? Isn't it, though? Okay. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that David Paulides heavily implied at first that he thought this was Bigfoot taking people away.
Okay.
Now, these weird cases stand as weird even if you don't introduce Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
But David Paulides has, when his books gained wider popularity, to seem less insane, he really downplayed the Bigfoot angle.
Okay.
And was just like, let's look at these strange things in the woods, you know? To be fair to him, in his book, he never brings up Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Even before it was popular, he just says, here's these weird cases. But if you listen to his early interviews and his record of being in the woods to look at Bigfoot beforehand,
right,
it's clear that he's thinking this is Bigfoot, right? And again, some of the cases where there's a big biped carrying a bundle, right? But this stuff, there are some cases that are very interesting. Like there's the Casey Lynn Hathaway, which happened in 2019, which is actually not in the book.
Well, hang on, back up a second. I got a question about this one. So does David Paulides suppose that this guy's name is Aaron, right?
Uh-huh.
Did Aaron actually go to these locations where his stuff was found, or was Bigfoot taking Aaron's stuff and using it and dropping it and distributing it?
Isn't that a good question?
Is that even... Does he even venture a guess?
Well, he will often point things in the book. Like there's one case of a guy going missing in a very obvious, like, how did he go missing? And then his body's found like way over here, and then in the middle of a Whitewater Rapids river is just his backpack placed on a rock, like really neatly, with all the stuff taken out and placed like someone was looking at it.
Weird.
Like as though someone had abducted him, taken his backpack and says, "Ooh, look at this shiny stuff," like a gorilla,
right?
Sort of placing it out. And the gorilla's big enough to stand in the Whitewater Rapids, though no human ever could. And he's just like, look at all these things. Huh. And then he just walks off. So that is an element of what he's implying here.
Okay.
Now, here's a story that happened in January 2019, last year, that is not in the missing 411 cases, which I heard on the local news. You probably heard about this one, actually, which is of a 3-year-old boy. And I thought, oh, this is missing 411 all day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was last year in January 2019. Casey Lynn Hathaway, a 3-year-old boy, disappeared on Tuesday. Have you heard this one?
It's been a while, but the name rings a bell.
He disappeared from his grandmother's backyard while playing with other children. So they were playing in the backyard. She goes in to get him a snack or something. Comes back, he's gone. Again, the FBI is out there instantly. Very strange. And the U.S. Marines were called from Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point and joined to find the effort. So again, we have the FBI and the military. Very short notice out to find it. Now, maybe they're just very altruistic.
Where was this?
North Carolina.
Okay.
Maybe they're just very altruistic. I don't know. I don't typically associate altruism with the Marines and the FBI, but maybe. So he disappears on Tuesday. On Thursday, the boy was found alive. He was located by professional search and rescue teams. He was stuck in like this big bramble. Again, he's 3 years old, and he was calling for his mom, and that's how they found him, because they heard a little kid going, "Mommy, mommy," you know. And they said, other than being scratched up, he was fine. Now the thing is, it was raining and below freezing in the middle of January for 2 days, and he was without food or water. The kid should have been dead or in much worse shape.
Yeah.
Okay? But he was fine. When they got him back to the hospital, they said he was sitting there watching Paw Patrol in the hospital. And he said his aunt, Brianna Hathaway, made a post on Facebook. And she said, here's what she said. Casey is healthy and smiling and talking. We asked him what happened, and he said he, quote, hung out with a bear for 2 days. God sent him a friend to keep him safe. God is good. Miracles do happen, she posted. She posted this while he was being observed in the hospital eating Cheetos and chicken nuggets.
He hung out with a bear?
For 2 days. Now, here's a problem with that one. Bears are not typically very active in January.
Mm-hmm.
And they also don't usually just hang out with small children.
Yeah.
You might find a case of a wild dog, like a stray dog, hanging out with a child, keeping it warm. But a bear?
And I could see a child that age maybe confusing a bear and a dog. I mean,
well, possible. See, I thought about this, but I have a 3-year-old, and so I asked him, I showed him some pictures, like, what is that, dog? What's that, bear?
Okay.
They're different. I mean, a 3-year-old knows the difference between a dog and a 3-year-old knows what a dog is. 3-year-olds love dogs.
True. It's true.
You know, I mean, this would have had to have been a really big, scruffy dog to be considered a bear. But again, the boy was found only a half mile from where he disappeared. And the Marines and FBI were involved, and they'd searched this spot multiple times. And then somehow, and there's also inclement weather. There was rain instantly, you know? So we begin to ask ourselves, does the military and FBI get involved only when they suspect it's Bigfoot? And can Bigfoot control the weather? Dun, dun, dun. I don't know.
So we're to assume here that a bear came across this small child and decided, I'm going to take care of you. Which stuff like that does happen in the animal world. You know, sometimes
it does. But again, they should be
hormones
sleeping.
kick in or whatever. What?
The bear should be asleep.
Well, no, I don't think bears hibernate in the Carolinas. I don't think
that's true, but they don't. I don't think they're very super active either, are they? I mean,
right.
I could be.
Well, they spend a lot of time chilling, but I don't think they go full hibernation like they do.
Yeah, that's true.
In northern climes. So maybe the kid discovered the bear in a hole and went in, and the bear said, "Oh, come snuggle." And they snuggled together for a couple days. And then the kid, the bear kicked him out of the house or something. I don't know.
The bear is just chilling a half mile in a hole from the residential neighborhood. You know, I don't know. It's just a little...
I mean, it's possible, but...
It is possible.
It's pretty
more
wild.
Possible than Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's more possible than Bigfoot. But, again, what is it more possible than Bigfoot?
I don't know.
And what's with the Marines getting involved? Like every time there's a Bigfoot, it's the Marines getting involved or something. There was another case. I don't remember where it was, but there was this little kid, also 3 years old, and he disappeared in the swamp or near a swamp, and they were looking for him. And about 2 days later, this one searcher looks across the swamp, and he said, I saw this little kid poke his head out from behind a tree and then dart back. And I said, there he is. But how do you get across this swamp? I mean, it's like 5 foot deep.
Yeah.
And he's 3 years old. They get across there, they find him, they get him back, and they eventually, and he's fine. They ask, again, people that can't really tell you what happened are allowed to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he says, they finally, after interviewing for a long time, he says, well, I was playing and I saw this big man. He poked his head out from behind a tree and he waved me towards him. And so I went to see what he wanted. And then he said, we walked for a while till we got to a place, in his words, quote, of deepest dark.
Ooh.
And there were all these animals and they were howling, but they couldn't touch me because I was with a giant. And that was the kid's story of what happened to him when he was 3. He said, the animals in the deepest darkness couldn't touch me because I was with a giant. I don't know what to make of such things.
That's a trip right there, man.
I know. So, yeah, missing 411. If you're in a woods, just be careful. There was another one of an individual. He was hiking and he walked onto this. He somehow or another fell and ended up in this crevasse, like with his transponder going off, which meant no one could find him because of all the rocks. And a helicopter just happened to fly right directly over it and ping the transponder, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But when they got there, they were like, how did he get to it? Because his like clothes were like way on the other side. Like he must have walked through the woods, like, and it wasn't cold. Like, what was he? Just a bunch of weird stories in there over and over again about there's like ones with like a kid will be found dead, and then like he's found dead like halfway up the side of a mountain on a sheer cliff face or something. And you're like, what? And it's like, well, the only explanation you could possibly give for that is that a cougar killed the kid and drug his body up there or something.
Yeah.
You know, which is reasonable, but it's also the kid doesn't appear to have cougar marks on him. So, who knows? Maybe he could have pulled him by his clothes, you know.
Weird stuff happens in the woods, guys.
In a woods. Weird stuff happens in the woods. That was a disjointed from the earlier epistemological crisis, but I feel it helps because who knows what's in the woods?
Yeah.
Who knows what's in a woods? And that maybe you can build your Christmas tree around Bigfoots like David Paulides did.
Yeah.
And hang your ornaments off that.
There you go.
I don't know, man.
You know, sometimes we just gotta let the audience decide what to do with the content. We can't frame everything for you. That's all I'm saying.
No, I can't give you your own narrative. You gotta go out there. You gotta get some gnosis, frankly. Get out in the woods and do gnosis.
Don't just do gnosis.
That's what everyone's always just doing gnosis. They just disguise it as other things.
Oh, you got your gnosis permit, mate.
Oh, you got a gnosis license?
My license. I got my gnosis license.
Enough of the shenanigans.
I'm so sleepy. Enough!
Enough of the shenanigans.
Enough of the shenanigans.
I am totally out of AAA batteries.
Sorry to hear that.